Chapter 13. What's with Willard? Brett loved being over there. He loved the music. He loved the posters on the walls. He loved the laughter. He loved that no one used anyone's actual name. They just called each other Willard. Hey, Willard, what time do you get home from work? Willard, you're up next on Blades of Steel. Would you grab me a soda from the fridge, Willard? He loved the horn. They'd sit on the couches and drink from a collective gallon jug of water. It started by saying, pass it around the horn, as they passed it down the line and around the couches, but soon it transformed into simply calling horn when you wanted the water. But most of all, he loved the banter, the stories that got told back and forth and became what felt like collective brick lore. Superguy got thrown out. He's lucky the bouncer didn't kill him. Well, you're supposed to wait a few days, but Marge called her that night. She couldn't hang up fast enough. After the bar closed, we went to 7-Eleven for Big Bites, and next thing we knew, Marcus is doing his comedy set for the bums in the parking lot out front. It was magic. It was glamour. Brett was starstruck. He wanted to be part of it, like an extra heartbeat ramming through him. He thought about it almost constantly. After work, he drove over, and if no one was home, he'd wait in front of the house. Amidst the growing parade of people who came over to hang out, Brett was always there. At a party, someone was surprised to learn that Brett didn't live there, and Brett's heart sprang up and howled. Then Superguy chimed in and said, well, he pretty much does. And Brett practically swooned. It was late. The bars had closed, and they were back at the house playing the PlayStation. Brett was drinking beers as fast as he could. I think I'm going to puke. Someone come watch. He staggered outside, but no one followed. He stood out on the front of the lawn, gulping down the last third of his beer. It's coming, Willards, come on! Mumbled yells from inside, but no one came. He stumbled a bit more. He wasn't going to throw up. He stood up straight and took a deep breath. There was a hose on the side of the house. Remember that time Brett was wasted and sprayed us all? That was nuts! Brett fumbled to get it turned on, then put his thumb against the nozzle to create a hard stream. He turned and fired it at the front window. He heard screams from inside. Now he had their attention. Marge stepped into the doorway. Brett, don't... He hit him full blast. Marge screamed, hauled back, and suddenly something smashed into Brett's forehead. Brett staggered backwards as the beer bottle spun away. Then he fell back into the yard. He heard the door slam. Brett was so wasted he took a bottle to the head, and that was it. He spent the night passed out in the yard. He lay there smiling. He could hear them inside, but the tone was grouchy. They weren't laughing. He closed his eyes and clenched his fists. He got up, ready to trudge to the door, knock, and apologize. Then Brett got another idea. You guys won't believe what my buddy Brett did the other night. The sign read, The Brickyard, and they saw it every time they drove onto the 5. It had old-timey lettering and was at least 12 feet long. The building looked like it had once been a bar, but it had obviously been closed for years. However, the sign still hung over the front. Brett brushed off the dirt from the front yard and walked to his car. He popped the trunk and fished out pliers, screwdriver, and a tire iron. Then he took off walking into the quiet night. 20 minutes later, he was on the sidewalk, looking up at the sign. It was a one-story building with a tree next to it. Brett went to the tree, climbed it quick, out over the big limb, and easy as that, he was up on the tar roof. He took a second to listen for cars, then crept to the front of the building. Brett went and got it. He was like a monkey. We just woke up, and there it was. Unbelievable! The sign was basically a giant rectangle that hung off the edge of the building by 2 giant clasps. Brett reached down with the pliers. The first clasp was rusted, but once he got it going, it wasn't hard. He got the clasp so it was just about open. Then he crept over to the other side. This one stuck fast. He squeezed and pulled so hard his hands were trembling, but it was no good. He took the tire iron and gave it 10 hard whacks. And then for the next 15 minutes, occasionally pausing to hide from a car, he worked it. But it was not going to budge. Brett rolled back, panting and looking out at the night. No, seriously, I was up there, but it wouldn't come off. I was this close. Wow, too bad you couldn't get it. That would have been an incredible story. Fuck it. Brett rushed back to the other clasp and popped it. There was an eerie silence and then a whoosh as the end of the sign swung down. Then Brett rushed to the side of the building, down the tree, ran full speed to the sidewalk, grabbed the hanging sign, and Tarzaned out over the sidewalk, riding the arc of the sign up into the air. At the peak of the arc, he heard a groan, and then Brett was weightless. In a colossal crash, he and the sign both slammed down onto the sidewalk. The wind was knocked out of him, and the back of his head stung. He stumbled to his feet just as a car went by. Shaking off the fall, Brett got up and rushed to the sign. It was even bigger than he thought. He grabbed the end and tried to drag it, but it was impossible. So instead, he lifted one end, getting the sign standing almost vertical. Then he spun around and let it come down onto his shoulders. Like a giant seesaw with him as the fulcrum, the sign balanced precariously on his hunched back. Then, wobbling and weaving and straining from the incredible weight, Brett took off down the sidewalk. He made it 2 blocks, turned on Sonora, and managed to get under the freeway. From there, he made a hard left and got behind a dumpster just as the car shot by. Brett's chest ballooned with fear. It was a cop. The car who saw him must have called 911. The hunt was on. From there, it was cat and mouse. Like an ant with a chopstick, Brett stumbled and gasped down hallways and behind fences, barely keeping his balance. Twice, he managed to get out of sight just as the cop cruised by. By some miracle, he made it to Western Avenue, but crossing Western was an exposed sprint across a wide street. Brett was exhausted. He listened, looked as best he could, and then took off. He staggered over all 4 lanes, over the curb, over sidewalk, turned onto the side street. The cop car was right there. The lights blasted on and the siren whooped. Brett's whole body rang out in panic. He charged sideways into the small alley and out of sight for just a moment. He dropped the sign and darted into a small gap between 2 buildings. Then he sprang up at the wall, kicked off across the space to the other building, kicked again, back and forth, up and up until he flopped onto the flat roof of the building just as the cop car came around the corner. Brett lay on his back, trembling from effort and trying desperately to keep his breath quiet. The cops were right below him. He could hear them marveling at the size of the sign. So close, but had to ditch the sign to get away. Crazy you even got that far. That would have been legendary. The cops were on their radios, calling for backup. Brett rolled to his hands and knees, then peeked over the roof. The sign was right there, both cops standing over it. That would have been legendary. Beside Brett was an empty glass bottle someone had left up on the roof. He grabbed it, popped to his knees, and with all his might threw the bottle down the alleyway. The bottle burst loudly, and both cops jumped. Down there! Come on! They rushed down the alley toward the noise. In a single fluid movement, Brett sprang over the side, bounced on a windowsill, then down to the pavement. He grabbed the end of the sign, lifted, spun, got it on his back, and was running before it even came down. He charged back the way he came, back across Western and down a small alley. There was a small gap between 2 dumpsters. He quickly dropped the sign there and then was off again as fast as he could run. He ran down a long alley and almost out of the sight before the cop car spotted him. Brett turned hard into the courtyard of an apartment complex. Without thinking, he scrambled up a trellis, over a second-floor balcony, and threw himself onto a small deck. He wriggled behind a row of potted plants. Then he froze and waited. He heard the TV from the apartment just inside. He heard the freeway in the distance. Then he heard the squawk of the police radios. They were on foot, and they were in the courtyard. A powerful light started darting all over the courtyard walls. For a terrified, delicious moment, the spotlight sat right above him. And then it moved on. Brett was right there. The cops didn't find him. Brett was beaming with an uncontrollable smile. He could barely stop himself from giggling. He heard the cops leave, but stayed frozen another 15 minutes, smiling the whole time. He carefully slid over the balcony and down to the courtyard. Then slowly and carefully, he started making his way back to the brick. He stayed patient and took his time and made it without a single car seeing him. He went quietly into Marge's room. "Marge, wake up," he whispered. "What?" Marge mumbled. "Get up. We need to go grab something. We need your pickup truck. You're going to want to get up. For sure." "Get the fuck out of here," Marge sleepily barked and rolled over. Brett stood in the dark bedroom staring at Marge's curled form under the sheet. That would have been legendary. To hell with it, he thought. I'm doing it anyways. He snatched Marge's keys off the dresser. Then he grabbed 2 blankets from the living room. He started Marge's truck and slid it out of the driveway. He kept the speed nice and steady. Dawn was coming up, but the streets were still deserted. He did a casual drive-by to make sure it was all clear. Then he came around and backed into the alley. He didn't run. He just walked back, lifted up the sign, and pivoted it into the bed of the truck. He covered it with the 2 blankets as best he could. Then, nice and easy, he drove back to the brick, his chest singing with utter, unsatiable glee, pitching higher and higher the closer he got. Damn right, it's the centerpiece of the brick. How did we get it? Grab me another beer because this story's a good one. Brett backed into the driveway as easy as can be and threw it in park. Then he went and propped the door open and with careful, precise steps walked the sign right into the living room. He closed the front door, returned Marge's key, and lay down on the couch. It took him at least an hour, but he finally dozed off. Holy fuck! A shocked super guy woke Brett up. What is it? Willard, get out here. You gotta see this. You too, Willard. Marge and Charles staggered out sleepily and their jaws dropped. No way! Holy shit! They all stood a moment before Super Guy turned and asked, Brett, how did you possibly pull this off?